What's up, everybody? My name is Paul DiNuzzo.
And I'm the guy with the weird European accent. I'm Richard-Erik Jarvi. How's it going? And together, we're Class Action. Paul, tell us, what is Class Action?
Class Action. That's the show you're watching. Basically, it's our show here on the Action Industries YouTube channel, where the two of us will take a look at a film, any film. Could be a new film, could be an old film, somewhere in between, and we discuss it. We give our first thoughts or our brief thoughts. We do a review, not a deep dive review. This is not going to be a review show, but a little bit to get into the movie itself. But inspired by that review, we then present our what we call the Class Action Brief of the Week.
The Class Action Brief of the Week is where we take two opposing viewpoints, can be movies, movie franchises, or even Hollywood personas, and with the help of 5 custom-made categories, we decide which is the winner.
Exactly, and so a lot of fun. We've done this for a couple of weeks now. We've had some great ones already. We've had Terminator versus the Alien franchises one. We took some random movies that we did, Ready or Not versus Happy Death Day, which I don't know. Last week
we did Star Wars.
Last week we did Star Wars, which is funny enough because this week we are also doing Star Wars. And we might be doing even more Star Wars in case you're not sick of hearing about it, because I'm not sick of hearing about it still because I love Star Wars and I know you love Star Wars. But as we said, let's go further into this. As I mentioned, we are on the Action Industries YouTube channel, the home of all things Ben Bateman and Andrew Guy, two great guys giving us our chance here. We salute you for that. And they're responsible for some amazing content on the web. They do the Action Guys on the Collider Live podcast. They do action reviews. They do first looks. They do game shows on their channel sometimes, with Commanding the Army, which will hopefully return as the holidays progress, or after the holidays, I should say.
Yeah, me too. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun watching that. And of course, their main show, the baby that got us together on this, is the Action Movie Anatomy. Their show on the Popcorn Talk Network, which is well over 200 episodes now, and it's glorious.
It's the best thing on the interwebs.
Could very well be. And of course, let's also do the movie trivia schmoo down there, heavily involved in that as well. Now, usually, this is where we go into what AMA covered this week, and that, in fact,
what did they cover this week?
A big fat nothing.
Nothing.
It's holiday time.
Paul, I'm just going to say, Paul filled out the doc. What did they cover this week? Nothing, in caps.
I was a little tired. I was a little tired when I filled out the doc, but I figured I'd just throw it in there. Doing nothing. And it's going to be that way this week, next week as well. They're taking the holidays off. They don't have a return date yet in mind, but it should be right after the new year.
I'm guessing so as well, yep.
So with that in mind, we are going to go straight to our next section, which is our film review. And the film review this week is basically the same film we previewed last week. Star Wars Episode 9.
The Rise of the Rey Saga.
The Skywalkers. Yeah.
Kylo,
Ben,
Solo Walkers,
right.
Drowners.
Right. I really wish we had the soundtrack playing right there. That would have been nice if we could have just thrown that in there. It would have been a nice little...
You mean the...
Exactly. We could have our own little crawl. But, well, okay, film...
when the crawl came on, I cried like a baby. Like a baby.
I did. I had a little single, at least one single man tear, if not a few dozen. Let's say it. Let's get it out of the way. I mean, this is a review. A lot of people have already thrown up the reviews, so this is not a new, fresh take. This is but it will be.
You and me haven't done it yet.
We have not. But it's very funny. This is a very not funny, but it's a very divisive film, like The Last Jedi before it.
I saw you on Call to Action.
That's right. Last night I was on Call to Action, one of our sister channels, so to speak, and we had a deep dive review with 3 others who were definitely more negative about the film than I am.
I wish I was there. I saw you hanging in there with them, taking the punches. It ain't about how hard you hit; it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
And that's what I did. I got cut a few times, but I was still standing tall at the end of the day. So, but that was actually, I will say, is Kelsey Kirkland was actually pretty positive overall. She just had a little issues with it. So, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about our look at the movie. So why don't you start with your thoughts, since you're the one who saw it first, had to tease to me your thoughts before I could even see it. It was driving me insane.
So, yeah, this has been a journey, because my first thoughts were exactly what Michael, Kelsey, and James were in last night's call to action, I didn't. Well, I wouldn't. My initial score was 3 out of 5. It was, which is the lowest of any Star Wars movie. I came out. I was like, oh my god, there's so many so much that annoys me. I wanted to like it more. I'm just gonna say, my process for The Rise of Skywalker is, I went in wanting to love it. I came out. I was very much in the middle, like a bit over average, but I was trying so hard to like it more. I've seen it 3 times now, and I've worked on myself, and I've finally gotten to a place where I can say that I love it. And I'm giving it a 7.5 or a 7.7, somewhere in that range out of 10. So yeah, but okay, I feel like I'm lost for words. I'm trying to say so much because it's Star Wars.
I get it.
Struggling, but it's weird. So the fact that I'm saying that I've had to work so hard to get to loving it it's kind of a bad sign, but at least I've gotten there now.
I'm actually going to say that's kind of a funny thing you say that, because I don't think there's any other franchise in the world that people actively try to like something if they don't like it immediately.
But I feel like most people, they try to hate this movie. Most people, I feel like they want to hate this movie. But I'm on the other end. I didn't like it at first, but I'm trying to like it more.
Well, I'll go into my first thoughts then, like what you just said. Then we'll break down the movie a little bit further. My thought process was, I was excited as all hell for this movie. I've never fallen out of Star Wars. I've always been headlong into Star Wars. I did see it about a day later than the opening. After the press had already seen it and gotten their reviews out there. You had seen it, you gave me your review. So I guess my expectations were definitely, I don't know if tempered was the right word. My expectations weren't lowered at all, but I was just very much more intrigued, to the point of I couldn't understand what the reviews were telling me, if that made sense. It was this whole idea of like that I loved part of it and I hated part of it. I don't know where I'm going. That's the initial level. I don't know where it lies for everybody. So when I got there, I took it in, and as soon as I saw them, I was like, I understand now. I get the difficulties. I get the problems people have with the movie, but I realized that I didn't care. Like it didn't bother me. A lot of stuff that bothered people bothered me, but not to the point where it affected my overall enjoyment of the film. So I came out of it liking the film quite a bit still. I've now seen it 3 times, and to me it's gotten even better, only because it's the bad parts have easily been smoothed out. I always feel like I have to see a Star Wars movie at least twice before I can even give first thoughts. So the first movie, I have so many preconceived notions that I try not to, but I do. And I just getting past that whole, like, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be at all. This is something totally different. That, like, it's almost like I need that as a palate cleanser. Okay, now I can go in knowing that's not going to be what I thought it was going to be. Let me take it as you're giving it to me, so to speak. So the third time is like the double checking on the second time. At the end of the day, I gave it a 7 or 4 out of 5, so 8 out of 10. We'll say 8 out of 10 for me.
Yep. That's what I gave it on Letterboxd as well. But I feel like, because you can only go half star.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Makes sense. So let's start with, I guess, I
got a question for you, because you said you went into this knowing the first reactions and the non-spoiler reviews. Do you think you would have been in the same camp as me if you hadn't gotten any of the like the press or the reactions?
It's impossible to say. It's really impossible to say, because I can't. It's hard for me to put myself.
I know. But what do you think?
But thinking ahead, possibly I might have been. I think I might have been more overwhelmed by the idea. I might have been more bowled over with some of the things that went down, because I guess knowing some things that were, again, and I don't mean specifics, but knowing that there was some issues with the overall, and I kind of like, okay, well, I can know there's something wrong. Let me see what that is. Whereas if I hadn't known anything at all, I hadn't heard any first thoughts, I might have just been like, well, totally bowled over with them. So I guess probably it did help a little bit knowing that it was not such a smash home run success for everybody across the board. So.
Because it's weird. It feels like the entire movie, it's not a bad movie. It's not a badly made movie, but there's but still there's issues, and like you said, and I said it to you as well. This movie is a lot of movie.
That's the word both said. It's a lot of movies, a lot going on, and that's my first point of my review here is that it really is. It's something I mentioned on Call to Action last night. Obviously, JJ did not love where Rian Johnson had taken The Last Jedi because the first like half the movie and even sprinkled throughout was basically JJ's course correction, and it almost like it was like he tried to make a second and third movie in one.
Yeah, definitely. Now this was a sequel. This has been said a lot that this was a sequel to The Force Awakens,
right? And it just kind of it has little bits and pieces. Now it's funny because it seems like it divided over the major fandom. It was like if you loved The Last Jedi, you hated Rise of Skywalker, and if you hated The Last Jedi, that you loved The Rise of Skywalker. I'm not that person because I actually love The Last Jedi, but I love The Rise of Skywalker too. Although I will say we'll actually get to this in a different segment later on, not even this show, a different show, even I'll talk about that later on too. Or The Last Jedi to me is a amazingly beautiful, wonderful film, but I'm not sure where it fits in the Skywalker saga. But that's a totally different take. But because of that, The Rise of Skywalker was definitely much more of a Star Wars Skywalker saga film, which helps me like it a little bit more. I get where JJ was going from it. But that being said, there's a hell of a lot of plot convenience. There's a hell of a lot of MacGuffins. Like the first 45 minutes are, we're going to do this. We're going to go to this planet. We need to get that. Now we go to this planet. We need to get that. A lot of.
You didn't like the first, like the opening. I'll say when they get to the missions, I feel like the movie is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen is when Kylo is chasing or just finds the holocron and goes.
The very beginning was awesome.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit! They're doing this, they're doing that, they're incorporating this. We're already getting Palpatine.
Right, a deep dive into like the Sith lore, which we haven't gotten in the movies. It was like we touched base on it in the EU a lot in the cartoons, the comics, and everything else. But all of a sudden, we have this stuff in our face and the visuals. Loved it. Now, that actually brings up a good point, though. Palpatine. That was such a divisive thing. Like, how do you bring him back? How do you bring him back? I actually am probably in the minority. I feel like I'm in the minority here. I love how they brought him back because they basically said, "Fuck you! I don't care how he was brought back. We want him ending this saga." So, in a film where you have space magic, lightsabers, Sith magic, the Force, cloning technologies, everything, does it really matter the specifics of it? You can basically say it's an illusion, fuck you. You can let it go that way, and I can go okay, and instead of like drawing it out, it's just nope, boom, there it is. Palpatine's back. He's right in the fucking crack, the crawl, and he comes up right in the beginning. He quotes that awesome line from Revenge of the Sith, which I know you talked about in a text before the movie. To look out for this quote from Revenge of the Sith, and it's exactly the way. And I completely loved it because that's what set it up for me. I didn't care anymore. Like, okay, I'm all in on it. I know some people were bothered by that. Were you bothered by that at all? His return?
I loved everything about Palpatine and how he was in the movie. There was no way that was some of my favorite parts in the movie. I kind of approached this review this time. I made like the negatives and the positives, and the first thing I have on the positives is everything about Palpatine, the Sith Lord, the holocrons. I hate the fact that they call them Sith Wayfinders, but I get it. It's for the casual viewer to understand it.
Right.
So yeah, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many walks. I didn't mouth it along. I just said it along.
Right. Yeah, I can't believe they're doing that quote for quote, line for line.
Yeah.
Like, sweet.
So I was like, I want as much prequel like throwbacks as I can get. And there was this one thing I wanted more than anything. I wanted Hayden in the movie. That was the one thing that would have made or broken the movie for me.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But we'll get there. But I don't know if you're maybe on board with this. If we go through my negatives and you kind of go along into those points, because I feel like you've already reviewed it. I just want your takes on I have like 6 points that are negatives for me. I just like to hear your thoughts on it. I'm totally like saying this to you now. I'm just wondering if you're.
What? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the first negative. Okay. The opening crawl. I wasn't a fan of the opening crawl.
I wasn't the first time. Second time and third time, I went into it because I really felt like it hit that.
Interesting. I'm the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, the first time I saw it, the first time you can't really, you're like, oh, the Star Wars, it's like, oh, text is like, you can't take in any of it. The second and third, I was like, it's so simple. Why didn't I understand? It was like, usually the crawls are, they're layered, they're complex, they set up things. This was Palpatine's back, Leia setting spies, Rey's training, battles almost about to start. So,
To me,
so very simple.
It harkened back to the simple serials of Lucas's youth. That's how they used to be back in the day. It was always a plot contrivance. It was I always pictured that the guy from the Clone Wars, the dead speak, and it's like big like newspaper reporter kind of voice. That's just. I get what you're saying. It didn't bother me. That might be one of those things that kind of thing smoothed out for me a little bit. The first time I saw it, I was caught up with the Star Wars thing, but I kind of was like, I guess it's just something new being brought up, like the dead speak. Like, what is that? Like, what is this going on here? But I got the end of the day, I kind of, well, it's the same as the serials back in the day. Is it the best crawl? No, it's not the best crawl, but it fits well enough for me to not worry about it too much, if that makes sense.
That's for me. Eventually, I'm okay with it. I just wasn't the biggest fan. The second thing I have on the continuity errors, because you already talked about it. This is one of the biggest thing why I almost disliked the movie as well. We kind of talked about it already. The biggest thing is where Luke catches the lightsaber that Rey's throwing into the fire.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things for me, is like, and the fact how Luke says that's not how you. I'm sorry, what was the line? The Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. That's like a straight like JJ going, "Fuck you, Ryan."
Although that being said, it did Yoda in Last Jedi establish that he can have physical contact with the world. I mean,
no, I'm fine with the contact.
But so just the weapon part.
Okay, the fact that he just
it was a fuck you in a way. It was almost a way like the way Mark Hamill delivered it, though. It was almost like it was a wink, wink, nod, nod as well. It was like
he had a smirk. He was like
to Daisy as well, or to Rey as well, to say like, this is when I did. Now you're making the same mistakes I did. Like it was an F you to Rian Johnson, but I also felt like it worked in story too, as Luke basically saying, yeah, I did this. I did that last time, but I was wrong. I was an idiot for doing that kind of thing. So I get the problem with it. I liked it in world as much as I did like it. I didn't actually like the meta version. Well, that was one of my least favorite parts of The Last Jedi, though. I hated that he did that in The Last Jedi. So I don't mind the retcon of that, to be honest with you.
I don't. It's just weird. Yeah,
it was weird.
It was a little weird. But...
Although, let me interject. I would say the main problem, it would be more of a problem if it was done as if Luke didn't know he did it before, but with the smirk, the nod towards it, it's basically him acknowledging that he had done it poorly before, and this was him correcting himself, so to speak. So I was okay with it.
Okay, all right. So so the myriad of the Star Destroyers that had all planet-killing capabilities. That was, I get the reasoning, because they sort of want to bring back the OT feeling and not have, the prequels did something completely different. There almost wasn't even a villain in there until the last movie.
Right.
This was also like, we're just gonna give you a Captain America Winter Soldier storyline and just
I wasn't a fan of it. It led to one of my favorite moments, but at the same time, the whole idea of the whole Sith fleet kind of seemed very easy to do.
Yeah, because again, we had the planet blowing up. It was like,
yeah.
All right.
That was one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. I'll be honest, that whole thing, the Sith fleet and everything.
It was a cool visual to see how many of them sort of, but again, it felt that was the one thing that felt lazy to me. Honestly, one of the biggest things, a lot of people say that the writing was lazy for this film. I feel like they didn't have an idea, but they did the best they could with what they had. So I would never call this movie lazy. It tried so hard.
No, it did try. And that's one of my main issues. The thing is why I think I rate it so high is that JJ, I felt, was painted a little bit into a corner.
Yep,
because he didn't like exactly where Rian Johnson was going. He had one movie to tie up a saga. And going back to Last Jedi again, it seems like I hate The Last Jedi. I didn't hate The Last Jedi. I love The Last Jedi. But what I said yesterday on Call to Action is that it's the 8th film in the saga. It's not the right time to be completely subverting and diverting and changing. Like that's something you do at the beginning of another saga if you want to do that. This like it's like you're going A to Z, and all of a sudden we're doing A B C D E F G. Then it goes down to like numbers 1 2 3. Then it goes back. It wasn't the right time. The JJ had to do a course correction for himself if he wanted to end it the way he wanted to end it. So that's just a lot of things. That makes it a lot of movie. 2.5 hours is barely enough time. We're living in a world where the MCU was so popular and so amazing that Infinity War and Endgame are probably considered better finales, mainly because they had 18 films to do it.
So much time. So much
which
time.
I've like slowly developed this whole process and earn it. JJ had to basically do almost 18 films of work in one film. Almost. I mean, let's think about this. How many MCU films were there? Like, this is like the 3rd film in the saga. This is like, what was the 3rd film of the MCU? Iron Man 2?
Something like that, yeah.
Imagine trying to have the Endgame sequence in Iron Man 2. It can't be done. So I think he had an almost impossible task, and that's why I think I give him a little slack for it and make it.
That's why I liked it the 3rd time. I was taking into effect all these reasons that you just said as well. And one of the biggest things I think that I said there's a huge thing that bothers me at the end, and it's the I'm Rey Skywalker thing. Okay, now I've gotten on board with it more because I have a reasoning for it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll say why I have problems with it. First is like, when Leia talks to Rey, she says, "Don't be afraid of who you are." Okay, that's one of the biggest things. That's exactly, don't be afraid that you're a Palpatine, because it feels like she knows. They later say that Leia knew this as well. She tells you, "Don't be afraid of it." That's why I feel like they should have owned her. Like, she should have owned being a Palpatine and try to make that new name sort of like the Skywalker name. They could like make that name viewed more in a positive way. But because also her parents sacrificed themselves for her, I feel like this kind of discredits them as well in a way, because they were shown as like these suffering parents who tried to save their child, and they sort of got cast aside with Rey saying that she's a Skywalker. But I'll say the positive. The Force heal thing. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but Rey says, the first time she Force heals the serpent, she says to 3PO, 3PO asks her someone, it's like, what happened? She says, I just transferred some of my life force into that being.
Right.
So when we get the scene where Kylo is healing Rey at the very end, Kylo gives all of his life force to Rey. So essentially, Kylo is giving himself into Rey. Rey has now both herself and Ben inside her, and Ben is half Skywalker.
I get what you're saying. I kind of dig that aspect of it.
That made me feel like, oh, I get it. Which also made me feel like, okay, so Skywalker kisses another Skywalker, but we've gotten that before as well.
That's true. I never even thought of it that way. I kind of like that aspect of it. So, I mean, I didn't mind the whole thing from the beginning, because I always thought that the whole goal of don't be afraid of who you are can also be coupled with the fact is you can be who you want to be. Just because you're Palpatine doesn't mean you have to go evil. And I get claiming the Palpatine name for good, but in a way she's saying there's a name Palpatine and there's a name Skywalker. I'm choosing to be a Skywalker even though I am a Palpatine. I'm making that choice to be who I am. Be who I am is not my blood. To be who I am is what my actions are. So I'm choosing the name Skywalker because that is who I am. I'm not afraid of who I am. I'm afraid
I got a counter for you. Your actions should be the thing that justifies that name. That make Palpatine a better name with your actions.
No, I get there's both. There is two sides to that story. I viewed it as in she wants to choose and honor her master. She wants to honor her real father figures, Luke, and not father figure, but her parental figures were Luke and Leia. So to her, she is a Skywalker. She did learn from them. Luke probably taught her more than anybody else did, and Leia taught her more than anybody else did. Those two together And then you got Ben, who she feels like a part of the family now at this point. And in a way, it's a nice way to honor that, just because there's no more Skywalkers left. So let's let her be the chosen Skywalker now.
I'm just thankful that you're not into the bullshit that the Jedi should be called the Skywalker.
I didn't like that. I hated that shit.
This sounds horrible. I know it's like a big thing that's being discussed, but
a lot of people love it. I didn't like it at all.
No.
It'd be something if it was like hundreds or even thousands of years later, but it's happened like 30 years ago. I mean, Luke Skywalker just died like a year ago. It's not something it doesn't happen in that way. I don't know, but
that wraps up my negatives. I think we have to talk about the new characters a little bit. So which was your favorite new character? And
Babu Freak. I love him. He was funny.
Yeah.
He was cool. But I like Zori too. I like Zori and Poe had a great dynamic together. And
that's what I wanted to talk about.
I would love to see like a show with Poe, and I know Oscar Isaac's not coming back. He said something about not doing a Disney Plus series or something. But I would love to see more between their two characters, maybe a book or something, because they just had great chemistry. He could go a lot of different places with them. She was fun. She was a fun character to be honest.
Big fan of her. And Babu Freak was
funny. What do you think of Jana?
Oh yeah. I feel like she was forced on us to be like a replacement for Rose.
Yeah, that's what I felt too.
Kind of. Like I would have loved her more if there hadn't been such a cast aside with Rose. That's
true. We'll get into that in a second, but I will say I don't know if you noticed or not, but it actually was kind of confirmed that there was lines of Lando's that were edited out where Lando says something about his daughter being taken as an infant by the First Order.
Okay, well that would have made it way more sense. Now we got this like
the line at the end.
It's like out together, right? And this long look, and it's like what's going on here? It's so uncomfortable.
So basically, Jana's supposed to be Lando's daughter. In a way, that's the way it's supposed to play, which is okay. But I guess it makes sense in a way. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of her. She just seemed to be kind of there. But I wasn't a huge fan of Rose either, to be honest with you. And I hate
me neither. No.
I don't say that. Like it seems like a lot of people say it's hard to go past the running commentary of film Twitter and the things where they basically say that if you don't like Rose, people who don't like Rose are basically doing it because they're misogynistic or racist or something. A lot of people come across that way. And I know there's definitely that aspect of it, but I know I love Kelly Marie Tran, and the fact that she got bullied on social media is awful. And it's the worst. I mean, that shouldn't happen. We're a shitty fandom of that. They do that kind of shit. But I'll get off that. Just go back on the train of positivity because we like being positive here. I love Kelly Marie Tran as a human being. I even like her as an actress. I just the character didn't really hit very well for me. That's all. That's just all what it is. What it is. And I mentioned this yesterday on call. I think there was some reasons like, well, why didn't she go along with them? She was a big hit. She's a big part of The Last Jedi. Why didn't she go off with Rey, Poe, and Finn? But I think that JJ was trying to. JJ was trying to replicate the big three. You have Han, Luke, and Leia with Chewie the droids. Now you have Poe, Finn, and Rey with Chewie and the droids. That's what makes sense to me.
Yep, the new droid, Dio.
I loved him. I don't know why.
Is it Dio?
It is Dio, voiced by J.J. Abrams.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He did a temp voice for it. They decided not to ever.
He was really cool. I kind of wanted more because at first he goes like, "No, thank you, nothing." Yeah, it's like, "Oh my god," I felt so bad for him. I was like, "Oh, I just want to, cuddle it." I know it's a droid, but
I know.
Never underestimate the droid, right?
I never underestimate the power of the droid.
I would have wanted some moment to be with. I know, like Rey greased the wheels, sort of like squeaky wheel.
Right.
I kind of wanted for Dio to say, like, "No, thank you," just say thank you, or sort of like. Have this no thank you fade away and him finally embracing humans again or aliens or just
Agreed. I kind of like that. The only problem, the one problem with Dio is the fact that like just like BB-8 now, like it just means there's so many droids that they like R2 really didn't have a lot to do in this film, unfortunately, and that kind of that's one of my negatives. C-3PO had a lot to do in this film. He was actually a great part of the film.
One of the best lines in the movie was about 3PO as well. I feel like where they're about to, erase his memory, have the Sith language, and they ask him, and not the part where he says, "Looking at my friends."
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Part when they say, "You know the odds better than anyone."
Asking him his opinion.
Yeah,
and he took that pause, and he took that pause, and he's like, "Holy shit! They're actually after all this time, somebody's wants my opinion on it instead of shutting
I like the fact that it said, "You know the odds better than anyone."
Yeah,
and then he, that's the line.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. But she was like, the reason why she's like saying, like, "You know the odds better than anyone."
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
All right,
I'm asking your opinion. That never happens with 3PO. He had this pause, like, wow, and that's where he took and paused, and instead of being like the, "Oh God, we're doomed. Oh God, this is blah blah blah," he actually turned, stopped, and said,
"Yes,
we have to do it. We have to." And I was like, such a powerful moment for 3PO. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. That goes underrated moment. I think that passed a lot of people by, but I loved it. That was my favorites. What about what did you feel about Leia's? How we used Carrie Fisher?
It didn't bother me, but it didn't do a whole lot for me either. I feel like Leia's passing was something that I wasn't expecting, because I thought they were maybe wrapping her up in a different way. Right. I'm okay with them. Like, I don't want to say killing her off sounds so, I don't know, weird, because she's actually passed. Her passing in the movie was I know they were working with limited material, but it didn't, like, I never felt like sad at that moment. I feel like I said goodbye to her when Luke kissed her on the forehead in The Last Jedi. That was my, like, I was like very overwhelmed and emotional. This was sort of just like, okay, this happened, I get it. Now Kylo turns because of that, and I was feeling more for Kylo than I was for Leia at that point.
I get that. I will say this is one of the things I thought about when I was looking the film, when I was thinking about the film, is that J.J. Abrams, again, this is a very impossible task for him to be put in, the place they put it in. You have a character, probably the biggest character left at that point, who was going to be the focus of your movie, and she's alive in The Last Jedi. How do you can't explain her in a crawl saying, "Oh, she died." You can't like that. So, and you decide you want to honor her by not CGIing her. You're not going to recast her. I think they did a damn good job with what they had. Yeah, it's forced end of times. Yeah, there's times where it's kind of like, yeah, I get what you're doing. They definitely searched for story to fit her line, so to speak.
Dialogue was sort of like matched around,
right? But I thought that she did amazing. That was an amazing job to use her to turn Kylo there. Yeah, it made sense to me, and I like that aspect of it.
The one big thing, if we're talking about turning Kylo, is I agree with you 100%, and even more is when Han shows up, and it should have been Hayden at that point. That's something I'm just like.
It would have been a fist bump for me. Yeah. And it was a fist bump for me, I will tell you that, because Harrison Ford and Han Solo is awesome. And I do love that. I love seeing Han. And it worked for me. It's not saying it didn't work for me. But just as prequelists, so not prequelists, was Star Wars saga fans, that would have done a lot to finish the saga. And the idea that, like I said, in case you didn't see, my idea should have been Hayden saying something to the effect of, you've been following my footsteps all these years. You keep wanting to follow my footsteps. It seems like you might be forgetting that my footsteps led back to the light, or something to that effect. Then that's
perfect. That's right? I want this. That's perfect.
I know, right? I thought that too. Had to be perfect in there, but alas, we didn't get it. But that's okay.
But if we go back to Leia for just 1 second, the one biggest thing that I loved about her was we finally got to see Jedi Leia.
Yes.
And Rey calling Leia master, everything about that. The frequent sequence with Luke and Leia training.
Right.
Some of the best thing in Star Wars for me.
It was wonderful.
Oh my God, it was so great.
I'll even forgive the CGI face of her looking young.
Yeah, hers was pretty bad. Luke's was amazing.
Luke's was really good. I don't
know how they.
It might be that they have Mark Hamill, maybe they de-aged him or something. I don't know. Maybe that was somehow they didn't. They had him there on set, whereas Leia they actually had to.
Yep, could be.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's my own thoughts. But
Leia's saber looked so badass.
It was pretty badass.
I like the way. I'm like a little bit of a freak for the different sabers and their constructions and stuff like that. So Leia's was pretty cool. It almost looked like Obi-Wan's meshed with Windows. I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very true.
The force powers. Let's quickly talk about the new force powers before we move on. The fact that Rey used force lightning.
Force lightning.
Was that the fist bump?
That was not. I liked it. That was my fist bump. But I did. It was a fist pump, I guess. When I was like, "Ooh, that's cool. That's cool. That's
Mhm.
cool." That led into the whole idea of her being Palpatine's granddaughter more. Although, I mean, we know Count Dooku has done it actually for a Sith thing, not necessarily just a Palpatine thing, which they kind of implied when there was a Palpatine power. But I think it can be said that maybe that because he was the only Sith left at the moment or whatever, so I can go with it. I did like that. I like that, but that's not a new Force power, so it wasn't bad. The Force
Well,
healing.
yeah, I mean, for her, for
For
the
her, okay, for her.
you know.
That's right. We haven't. Well, yeah, that's true.
Oh no, I think Snoke used it.
That's what I was gonna say. I think Snoke used it briefly too as well. So,
Yep.
But there's the Force healing, which is again like a lot of the movie had to be. Well, this part
Weird
didn't have to.
Force healing.
It makes it a little easy. Like, where was Rey? Could Obi-Wan not have done that onto Qui-Gon? Obi-Wan was a Padawan.
But you know, one of the biggest reasons why, Rey was super powerful in this movie, and I think one of the reasons is we can go back to the prequels and think about how the Force always balances itself. Rey is pretty much the last remaining Jedi, so in a way, all the light side powers kind of concentrate on her, and they make her more powerful because the Force always has to be balanced.
Yeah.
That's why Kylo is also that strong, but not quite as strong because there's Palpatine, and they're sharing some of that dark side power. I feel like there's this bigger balance that's always like ruling the Force users.
Okay, that's an interesting theory. That's interesting theory. I'd have to digest that, but I guess that's. I mean, it's okay. I just felt it did make it easy a little bit. So all of a sudden, it was like, she's dead. She's not dead. Ben's alive. He's dead. It just seemed like, okay, well then we can do that a lot. That's why Ben faded so quickly at the end. I think instead of like sitting there for a second and then fading, was kind of like, I'm gonna fall over. I'm gonna fade quickly before you can heal me.
Yep. Well, that was the rise of Skywalker for me. That was Kylo becoming this back to going a Jedi. That's how I justify that happening.
Are you okay with him dying? That's a big question a lot of fans have.
I wasn't at first because I was one of the biggest plus sides of this movie and the old sequels is how they managed to do Kylo and Rey's relationship and these two characters. That was something that continuously evolved. I feel like that was perfect. I loved the fact that they kissed. And we got to see, I'm going to say Ben smile, because Adam Driver never smiled like he was dark side. So we finally see him smile. That was such an endearing moment, and them having this. I don't know. A lot of people say that was like this Disney prince kissing. No. That was something I never thought I'd see. I wasn't sure we'd get like #Reylo.
I did not like Reylo. I never liked Reylo.
No,
it happened. I'm okay with it. I accepted it, but I wasn't a big fan of that aspect of it. But I did like Ben returning to the light because we got to see. I wish we'd almost see a little more of Ben still in the light. One of my favorite parts of the fist pump was the very Han Solo.
Yeah,
with the lightsaber.
Also doing this like
right, the lightsaber that comes back and it starts with it. Oh, I love that. Oh, that whole Han Solo thing.
And his run, sort of when he's shed his like Kylo whatever, and he has just this like loose. Long like
just
shirt
needed a vest.
Just running into the temple. That's a hero's run. That's right. He's a Jedi. That felt so good.
The moment with Rey with the lightsabers like up together. It was great. It was great.
You mean that one?
No. I mean the one when they're actually together. When you're actually.
Oh right. Yeah.
And my last fist pump, I'll say we promised on this show we don't go into deep dive reviews. Well, we lied. This one. This is not how if you're watching the show for the first time, it's not what we usually do. Usually our reviews are like 15, 20 minutes, but Jarvi and I are huge Star Wars fans. That's what happens with us sometimes. So we apologize a little bit, but not really apologizing because I don't regret it. But I'll go to my last fist bump though. I loved all the voices from the past coming finally back. Be with me, and you get to hear Anakin got Hayden. Not quite what we wanted, but at least he was there. Hayden was in there. Exactly. You got Liam Neeson. You got Samuel L. Jackson, and you had Ahsoka and Kanan.
That's right.
With their actors playing that, as well as some other Jedi's from the prequels. Ayla Secura was there. Adi Gallia was there. All these voices together. I saw a listing, which I actually had it listing up. I actually found if you look online, there's a place where it says everybody and what they said. But it's really cool. That to me was the biggest fist pump because that was the best job that that JJ did as far as tying the saga together, not just the trilogy, not just the original trilogy. It was the whole saga, and that's led up to my big fist bump where she's like, it's almost like that. It was almost similar to the, the moment in Lord of the Rings, the I'm no man moment. It was kind of like that for Star Wars. The and I'm all the Jedi. Boom.
That was cool. And that's one of the things that I saw people discussing on Call to Action is that Palpatine said, Rey, like, strike me down in anger and you'll become me. But but Rey still killed Palpatine. Why didn't she become a Sith? She didn't strike him down in anger. Right. She was pretty much just like blocking, and it bounced back to him. Right. That wasn't her swinging in anger. That was completely different. That was something I wanted to say, just like for the record.
Fully agree. So I like that aspect of it too. My last fist pump, I'll say, is one I mentioned last night, but it fell flat for some people. But when Lando arrives with everybody and all the fleets there, that's like the end game moment, like Poe on your left. We don't know everybody, but at least Wedge was there. I would love to have seen some more sprinkled in, like if we could have found, I don't know, Wedge, like Lobot, or like somebody, I don't know, characters from that would have been cool.
Cloud City, though.
We did see Cloud City briefly, and we saw Wicket briefly at the end.
They showed us Cloud City twice, didn't they? When they were like just light speed jumping, that was Cloud City for a second there.
I have to see that again. The light speed skipping thing I have to see again, which also, by the way, I'm not a big fan of the light speed skipping thing. That seems so weird to like because you're running, especially because they're like on the planet. It seems they're so low and they're so like about to run into a wall. And they just like to me that seemed kind of weird. No, I didn't like that aspect of it.
What was the green planet? Do you know? The green smoky planet, sort of something. I figured it's something to do with like rebels or something.
I didn't recognize it off the top of my head, but that's me being, I don't know. I'd have to see it. I want to see it at home and like really slowly watch that scene, try to catch it where everything was. The first planet was Mustafar that Ben was on, though. You caught that, I'm sure.
Honestly, I didn't know that was Mustafar.
Yeah, the first planet they were on when Ben found the.
Or was killing all the.
Mustafar.
Seriously, that looked nothing like Mustafar.
No, it did. If you go back to the beginning of the movie when they show up in the TIE fighter, looks just like Mustafar. Then when they get on the surface, it's just an area that doesn't have the lava in it. That's all. If it's not the lava, it's a different part of the surface, I guess. But either way. Anyway, we are 42 minutes in. Let's wrap this up. What do you want to say? Any last bits on this?
Yeah, I'll just say that I was actually a fan of how fast-paced this movie was. I know it started off like planet, new setting. I kind of like the fact that The Last Jedi was a slower movie. This was super fast-paced, but honestly, for me, it didn't feel rushed. When I watched it for the third time, it didn't feel rushed. I kind of liked the fast tempo because that was what The Force Awakens gave us as well. And I think JJ pulled that off really well. So for me, when the movie finally slows down, when Kylo turns, that's like the moment when the movie sort of takes a breath. I feel like I kind of like the fact how fast everything was. And it makes me want to revisit the movie because I feel like there's so much I'm learning every time I watch it.
I do like the fast pace overall. There were certain moments I felt could have used a little bit more breathing. I don't know if I specifically say what they were, but a couple times there's emotional moments when like it could have used a little bit of a breath here. But overall, the fast pace in general, though, I liked. Chewie's morning Leia was perfect.
That
broke me.
Yep.
And so well played. I want to highlight. I want to give a shout out, by the way, to I never can pronounce his name, but Jonas Saratanamo. Well,
he's Finnish, actually.
Finnish. Can you say a name better than I can? Probably, maybe.
I'm just looking it up. It's Jonas
Swatamo. Yeah, Swatamo. I want to give him a lot of credit for stepping into the shoes of the legend of Peter Mayhew, not only as Chewbacca, who he really brilliantly does a good job as Chewbacca, but also as a Star Wars ambassador. I just love Star Wars and everything about it. Just wants to talk with people about Star Wars. He's like one of us. I think he's a great addition to the Star Wars family, and I want to give him just a lot of credit in the world there. So
agreed.
At the end of the day, that's our review, our big in-depth review. This is usually where the episode will end. We're just getting started, so we got at least maybe our meat of the story will be the review, and our lesson will be the brief of the week, which we're going to get to right now. We are going to talk about what's the difference between, or the difference, who's better? Which is better? Star Wars prequel trilogy
Hard today.
versus the sequel trilogy. What was that?
Yep. No, I'm just laughing how unstructured we are today.
Yeah, this is not our usual bit. So we're giving ourselves a little extra time for this Star Wars.
Yep.
But
yeah,
anyway.
well, I got the idea when I was watching the prequels and watching the first two sequels before The Rise of Skywalker, and I feel like, okay, I'm seeing a lot of similarities and stuff that I want to debate which is better. So I think sequels versus prequels is a very good topic of discussion.
I agree, because I think this way, the original trilogy is almost considered untouchable, and for rightfully so. It is a godlike saga.
But we picked Revenge of the Sith over.
Oh, we did. We actually did. That's true. Oh, they were giving some spoilers away. That's true. No, yeah, that's true. We did pick Revenge of the Sith over Return of the Jedi. I did not. I actually picked. It's funny. But actually, it's going to come into play with those categories. I still had Return of the Jedi winning, but overall, we had Revenge of the Sith winning. That's true. But I think nobody argues that the original trilogy is bad. Everybody always likes it's pretty much universal. Everybody likes the original trilogy. This is where it becomes divisive, the prequels and the sequels. Yeah, the prequels, who was hated for a while, but has really found new life. I think some people say it's because of Disney's new stuff, because of the sequel trilogy, but I think it's also just because the kids that watched it are now 19, 20. They're at that age where that's their Star Wars that they grew up with. I would be surprised if 20 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, the sequel trilogy gets a new life, even beyond what it has now, because it's the kids grow up watching that now.
I think The Last Jedi is definitely on track to become, maybe not The Empire Strikes Back, but somewhere in the ballpark.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I love the movie. We'll get into that later on, though. But
but I have a thesis for this whole brief, but I'll say it when we decide which is the winner. I'll see if that thesis sticks, but it's based on the prequels and the sequels, and it's a pretty strong statement, and I'm pretty proud of it. I'm just going to save it for now till the end of the episode.
Save it? Okay. I will say one thing I wanted to note before we get into the whole categories and everything else is that recency bias is a real thing, and it can work both ways. It can be recency bias is something you're like, oh, I love this because it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting, it's powerful. At the same time, it could also be, especially in the case of Star Wars, could be something that takes it away from you. You're kind of like, ooh, this is not the Star Wars that I know, and I have to kind of like sink into this and let this. There's a lot of stuff with the prequels that I didn't like at first. Now I kind of like, I'm like, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, that's very well said.
There's something I didn't like, but that's okay. It's okay. But anyway, let's get into our categories this week. Our categories, we have 5 of them. We got the better John Williams score. So John Williams did score both. So it's John Williams versus John Williams. Which had the better lightsaber battles? Come on, that's Star Wars right there.
That's what Star Wars for me. The lightsaber battles. Call me a kid, but that's what it makes for me.
The better world building / lore development. You can have a hard time titling it, but that's what we were saying. Basically, the world creation, the myth, the whole basics of the whole thing. We got better heroes and villains, or no, should we change that? Just going to call it better characters. Better characters, so that we can talk about which characters do you gravitate more toward? Not just the heroes, not just the villains, everything.
And the aliens. Everything.
The aliens, exactly. The aliens and creatures that can't be heroes because they're aliens.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Jarvi called me out of this earlier. I actually asked him, we were calling it heroes and villains. I'll tell this story outright. We were calling it heroes and villains, and I kind of asked, can we just say better characters? Because I would like to talk about some of the more ancillary, the aliens and the creatures and things like that. And he called me out for that. Well, that's kind of racist. The aliens can't be heroes. That's not what I meant. I kind of was talking more about the actual the creatures that weren't on either side, the alien species and different things like that. That's what I meant to say. But Jarvi called me out, and
justice for aliens.
Justice for aliens. We're building a space wall.
Oh God.
We're not gonna get political. We're done. Okay, we're done getting political. But and if I had the fifth the fifth category would be better design / directing. Basically a category we can talk about the technical side of things. Visuals, exactly.
Cinematography, the set designs, because that's a big thing in Star Wars for me.
Absolutely. So, well, with that in mind, why don't we head right into it, because we're already over time. Better John Williams score. You want to go first?
I will, and this is the only category where I'm still a bit undecided. I'll see if I can convince myself one way or the other. I'm pretty sure I've made up my mind. Well, the score in all of Star Wars is the one thing that has evolved flawlessly. I feel like if the movies, they can be like frowned upon if this didn't tread new ground or this didn't do that. The score by John Williams has always been on the rise, always has been evolving up the stakes. And the movie's music is one of the biggest reasons why I love all of Star Wars. And I love that John Williams did. Anyway, I'm sorry. In the prequels, for example, the lack of emotion and the lack of, you can say acting chops, although I'm a fan of what Hayden did, but I feel like the music in the prequels made up for some of the bad acting that was there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
I would say even in the original trilogy, not a bad acting, but the score is like a character in and of itself. Is the emotion behind the film is all partially from the score itself. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry, I digress.
No, very good point. And the sequel trilogy has these themes, these new themes for. I feel like it's Rey and I want to say Kylo's theme, but I think it's the First Order theme. The dun 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 dun.
That's Kylo.
That's Kylo's theme, right? So that's sort of the new march or the Darth Vader theme.
Right, it says. Yeah.
But on like these are the two biggest new themes that we have. But if I think about the prequels, it feels like it's an entire new symphony that was created for the world. The sequels, they feel more relied on the nostalgia, and they are hitting us with these feels down memory lane with the score. When the prequels, I don't think the prequels try at all to recreate the feel of the original trilogy, but to just explore and discover new ground. So I feel like I've made up my mind. I think this is going into the prequels.
110% agree with you. Actually, you brought up exactly what I was going to say. Is that it is the prequels were a completely new symphony. It relied very little. I mean, it definitely had some of the cues there.
Of course,
almost like I'm gonna bring up a different soundtrack. But if you ever go back to Creed and watch Creed, you watch the whole movie Creed play out, and they waited until the last moment to bring that Rocky music in. That was one of the best parts of the movie. John Williams did that a little bit in the prequels, and like not quite that hard line. But when he used the quotes or the previews, it hit really hard because they weren't as used. Whereas the sequel trilogy, there's a couple times during the sequel trilogy where like I noticed like almost direct quotes from the original trilogy. Like basically the same piece of music used in a different way. Now it's nostalgia probably, but the whole sequel trilogy is built on nostalgia, so that made sense in a way. But it's good. I love them. But the prequels had so many more themes. I mean, you had like the love theme.
Exactly. I was just about to say with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Battle of the Heroes. Everything just had more and more.
The Order 66 when it's like the tragic theme.
Anakin's dark deeds. There's so many different aspects of it too. Which to me, it's not even a contest. I mean, I love the sequel trilogy music. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot.
The Rey theme.
Racing is brilliant. I love
that's almost that single theme almost makes the entire category for me because it's that good. It's that good.
I think this also might be where recency bias comes in a little bit, though. I find that more and more as it goes along, I start catching in some stuff from that I missed the first time around, or I really start falling more in love with as it goes on. So I'm kind of curious to see if we say this again, like 5 years from now, if I'd still have the same reaction. But right now, I'm going to go prequel trilogy as well.
Yeah, it was closer for me than it was for you. I'll say that. So that's 2-0 for the prequels.
So now we have best lightsaber battles. I'll take this one first. This one again, honestly, hands down, it's easy. It's the prequel.
This very easy for me.
There was no real. I mean, the lightsaber fights in the sequel trilogy have the one of Force Awakens, which was a good one. The Kylo getting rid of Finn pretty quickly and having that moment where Rey grabs the lightsaber. That's a brilliant moment. And there's some moments where she almost goes dark. She tends into that a little bit. That was a good one, but it was kind of short. Last Jedi, there are no lightsaber battles really. There's the
I
Clash.
I think an argument can be made for the Snoke room battle. It's a lightsaber battle. It's not a duel between lightsabers, but it's a lightsaber battle.
Okay. If you want to bring that in, I'll accept that.
I took it that way, but
okay, that's fine.
It's individual,
No, you make a good point. I mean, I guess I should say that you shouldn't just be lightsaber versus lightsaber. It is lightsaber battle, so it does count. It doesn't change my mind. I think that's probably if that's the case, that probably is the best lightsaber battle in the sequel trilogy, and that's to me Absolutely. That's a problem. To me, that's a problem though. If that's the best lightsaber fight is not lightsaber, it's not as Star Warsian to me as the other ones. I mean, Luke and Kylo have this semi-match, but they don't clash because Luke's obviously not there. And the lightsaber fight, Rise of Skywalker, was pretty good. I liked it a lot, but it was a little brief, not as memorable as some of the. You have Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul, it's class act.
Oh my god, yeah.
Then you got Anakin versus Obi-Wan.
That's the best lightsaber battle in the entire saga.
I digress. I will not say that completely. So like Vader and Luke in Episode 6, but we'll go back. But otherwise, you're right. So I think this is easy. Prequels, hands down.
But I'll say this for the sequels: they incorporated the old, slower fighting style with some of the newer tempo. So the fighting became more. You feel like it's more heavy hitting, but less still technical. Has some of the flair of the prequels.
Less technical and more emotion, more raw.
Yeah, but still, it's the best of the two worlds. I feel like so.
Yeah, I get that.
In a way, almost like I won't say almost because I'm a sucker for the very flair-like dancing, jumping of the prequels. But the Snoke throne room fight is one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars.
I will say, if the lightsaber fights fit the saga, the points the saga that we're in, like the prequels had the highly trained Jedi against the highly trained Sith. Whereas the sequels, it's a Rey who's a raw, not really even trained very well as far as lightsaber battles go. Whereas his Kylo who's trained, but probably hasn't a lot of experience actually in lightsaber battles at that point. Minus whatever they did with Luke in the temple, who knows? We don't really know what happened there. So I like that aspect of it. But overall, I prefer the prequel trilogy's lightsaber battles overall.
So that's also for the prequels. We are 4-0.
4-0. Better world building
and beating right now.
That's true.
But there's 3 more categories. Everything could change.
Better world building and lore development. I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I have to say that Episode 9 really came in to save this category for me and made this a fair fight. We got a lot of new stuff introduced to the sequels that were, talked about in Legends and in Rebels. I'm talking about all the Sith Lord, the Sith Temple stuff, the holocrons. We got to go to a lot of new planets and got introduced to very exciting new characters. But the thing about the prequels that I love, but I know most people actually hate, is the fact that we get to see how life actually is in that world. We got to see where the Jedi really live, and at the temple we got to see, personal living spaces of Queen Amidala. That's something that's you don't think about wanting to see someone's, personal chambers, but we got to see also where Django lives, right? Django. Yeah. So that was all new ground, which was very exciting for me. I know a lot of people hated the Senate rooms and like the Senate hearings and all the politics. For me, that was also very exciting, which is weird. So I kind of loved the thing that most people hated. So I'm going prequels again.
Episode 9 had amazing additions to the world.
That's right. Some of the best world building and
some of them had some other stuff. There were some cool things with Crate, some things with Maz Kanat. I love Maz Kanat being added. Canto Bight. I hated the Canto Bight sequence, but I actually liked the Canto Bight setting. I'll say that.
Okay.
I actually like the idea of that. And I think that some stuff could be done well there. It just happened that it was a pointless part of The Last Jedi that happened to take place and took away from the story. That being said, again, I fully agree. George Lucas is nothing if not probably one of the best world building and mythology creators of all time. The best.
I'll say it. The best.
I'll say it too, hands down. But like him and maybe Tolkien is the only other one I can think of that goes into such depth. Actually, Tolkien goes into more depth in certain specific areas, but George as a more of a whole, builds a whole universe, different creatures, different. different planets. That's one of the problems I had with the sequel trilogy. How many fucking desert planets do we gonna get? You got Tatooine, you got Jakku, you get Pisana. Like, what the fuck? I mean, Lucas had different worlds each time throughout all the things, and they were all such unique individual worlds.
Naboo was sort of like this
Italian, like romantic kind of. I mean, it took whole areas, and I love the aspect of what everything George did with the prequels as far as world building is spot on for me. I love the politics. I admit I see where the politics got a little heavy handed and took away from some of the action, but I still love seeing how they lived. I have no idea how the sequel trilogy people lived at all.
No, not at all.
Common ground at all.
Yep.
The destroyed Hosni and Prime, you see like their government for like 2 seconds and then they're gone, and now it's like I don't even know what's going on in government. Like in Rise of Skywalker, it's been a year or so since The Last Jedi. I have no idea what's going on as far as the government goes. This is the First Order taking over as far as that aspect goes. Maybe, probably, because they're the only game in town, but we don't know. Prequels dealt with that pretty well and took care of that, and still managed to tell an awesome story that way. So again, for me, prequels.
I'm so sorry, my computer is gonna run out. Why don't you introduce the next category? I'll plug in the cord and I'll be back in like 20 seconds. Otherwise, I'm gonna go dark.
Oh, that's not good. All right, we took it way too long. We did way too long.
It's gonna take 10 seconds. Be right back.
That's what I'm saying. We took way too long in doing the review. I'll take you out. I'm going to be on the stream by myself until he comes back in. But I will talk, and hopefully you're still hearing me here. The next category we're dealing with is better characters. Like I said, heroes or villains is part of it, but also creatures and the like. Now, this is where the sequel trilogy has a great aspect, because you also have to include performances. And if anything, the prequels have lacking is... If anything prequels have lacking, it's in the performance aspect of it. You could say Hayden Christensen's not, you like Hayden Christensen, but generally it's considered not a great performance. Natalie Portman's not considered a great performance. Even Samuel L. Jackson's not considered a great performance.
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi.
It's not to destroy the Jedi. Ian McDermott's pretty good, but he's in both, so it kind of cancels each other out. And Ian McDermott's probably better than the prequels, actually, though. I'll give him that.
For sure.
Only because he had more to do. But the sequel trilogy does win the performance side, because you have Adam Driver, who has a phenomenal performance despite not having quite the material. He hits a home run with his side of it. Daisy Ridley, great job. John Boyega, great job. Oscar Isaac. I mean, there's no one who gives a bad performance.
Nope.
In any of the sequel trilogy. I can't point out anybody's, oh, that's a bad actor right there. That's a bad performance. Not one. So, but with that being said, acting is only part of it. You got to talk about actually better characters. Now, Kylo Ren's a phenomenal character, hands down. Rey, a great character. Do they compare it to the prequels, though? Anakin Skywalker, the story of the real hero of the entire saga. Not hero, protagonist of the entire saga. Which is one of the reasons, actually, I threw this thing called action during my review, and I'll mention this too, because I think it's an important concept to me, is that the sequel trilogy always feels a little bit out of place, because the real story is the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. Anything beyond that, like the sequels, it seems kind of like, that's going to be an add-on. So how can those characters meet the meat of the Anakin Luke? Not Luke in the prequels, but Anakin Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, all those Jedi, Yoda, Palpatine, Dooku, and Maul. Even though they're one notes, they're still awesome villains. Much better. I mean, the sequel trilogy has one note villains. They have like the Knights of Ren. They have all sorts of things, little creatures like that. But Hux, although I loved Hux and Skywalker.
No, he's pretty funny.
But so I think again, I gotta give it to the prequels. I think.
Yeah, I'm going sequels on this.
You're going sequels on this. Okay, we got our first vote for sequels.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. I don't think you're definitely not wrong. I love the character of Anakin and his arc.
I agree, but just like you said, like the character isn't solely made from acting chops, but you know how much I love Ewan's Obi-Wan and Hayden's Anakin. They're some of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, but that's solely based on some of my very irrational feelings, I feel like, because I take acting into account here. And for me, this category is taken by the sequels, and people might say that it lacks originality, but I feel like the big three with the addition of Kylo is the stronger argument. Because Poe, Finn, Rey, and Kylo, they are the characters that are fully fleshed and almost flawlessly acted, and they're the biggest reason why the sequels are as good as they are. If we think about Anakin, sorry?
I'm changing my mind.
I like it.
Not just because of your argument, but I also thought I was listening to your argument, but I also caught up to one more thing. The sequels also actually have Han, Luke, and Leia, and Chewie.
Very true.
The whole big. So you have two generations of heroes, and you get to see probably the best version, best Mark Hamill performances of the entire saga, and seeing them come back brought so much. Han Solo's return, and he, where I mean Force Awakens, when he comes back, Chewie, we're home.
Yep.
So I'm sorry, I did cut in you there. I just had to get that out there. I'm changing mine to the sequels. Go ahead.
I think it almost. Oh, I love the fact that you changed your mind. And honestly, listening to your arguments, you pretty much changed mine. So I was almost. Because if we think about Anakin and Obi-Wan, yes, they're cool characters, but one of the biggest downfalls of the prequels, like I said, is the fact that they're weakly acted movies. But it's hard to fight it because I'm one of the people who enjoys watching Hayden as Anakin, but I can admit that he's nowhere near as good as the actors were in the sequels. So, and Ian McDiarmid, he's in the prequels. He's one of the best actors in the prequels. But again, I feel like Poe, Finn, Rey, and Kylo, they are what make the sequels almost single-handedly.
Fair enough.
Because in the prequels, I feel like there's more. It's weird because I feel like in the prequels there's more great stuff about the characters, but the condensity of how good Poe, Rey, Finn, and Kylo are is what makes it.
I get that. Okay, so last category: better design / directing / better technical aspects of things.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to go? I'll go first.
You go.
Like Poe, do you go first? I go first. You go. Throwing out there. This is a tough category. But it comes down to me being a big Lucas fan as far as everything except for the actual script and how he directs actors. But visually, Lucas is unmatched to me. I love a lot of Lucas's shots. I love the wipes. I love a lot of his edits. I love everything that he does as far as the visuals go. Not to say that the sequel trilogy doesn't have a lot of great visuals. They also have the benefit of being 10 years on since George's last attempt to do a movie. So with that in mind, the visual aspect, the effects and everything are obviously going to be a little more smoother, a little better shown. But what Lucas did with the prequels was amazing. And I love the shots of the different worlds. Again, it goes back to the design of the worlds. The sequels had a little bit of laziness with the desert planets. With the crate, they're going to add the red salt, which I liked, but still kind of felt a little Hothian to me. It didn't seem like anything it wasn't a lot new. And instead of also, here I'm going to argue against myself in a way, and it kind of goes back into characters. One of the things I wanted to mention about the aliens, for example, like the sequels tried too hard to create new aliens for the sequel trilogy, whereas we already had a lot of aliens that I would love to have seen from the original trilogy and from the prequel trilogy, like more Twi'leks, more Devaronians, more Dathomir witches. There's so many actors we could have seen that the new trilogy tried too hard to make their own out of it, where they could have done that differently. I mean, in some ways they were lazy, in other ways they worked too hard at it. They didn't have that. It was kind of unbalanced to me. I've got to give it to the prequels because George's world building again is second to none. I love his visuals on that.
Did you just wipe all the categories, like 5-0 for the prequels?
No, I went with Carrot. Remember, I changed my mind.
Wow.
I changed my mind for the sequels, but otherwise, I'm 4-1 prequels. Come at me, bro.
I will, because this is definitely going to the sequels.
Okay.
And as much as I love seeing all these, like the new sets and what you talked about in the prequels, the new worlds, there is no match whatsoever to Disney's sets and visual effects. Sure, Lucas's prequels, they were groundbreaking at the time, but with the sequels, we get, again, like with the lightsaber battles, the best of both worlds. It's practical effects mixed with CGI. And we get, you talked about Crate. I'll come at you with Crate. Crate felt like a planet I could step on, and I could feel the salt scraping off, and I could see the red. When I'm watching the prequels, it feels like I'm watching something so fantastical, something awesome, but not something I could reach out and touch. When I'm watching the sequels, I feel like there's so many puppets. There's, again, these practical effects. JJ loves practical effects, and I love the fact that I love this about him. And he uses these practical effects, which makes these worlds feel so real. And the aliens, Babu Frick, for example, yeah, we got way more. I'm just blanking because he's so awesome. And they brought back Puppet Yoda as well, which I love. So this for me, and the cinematography, the lighting, I don't know, everything about the sequels, I feel like it feels, the prequels, they feel like it's filmed on a green screen. The sequels feel like they actually built these sets, or they're at these deserts or places.
I like your argument. Mm-hmm. You might be changing my mind on this one.
The throne room. They built the throne room. So there's a lot that I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I like George's directing as far as visuals go, as far as not effects, but I like George's directing style and the way he frames things. I like.
I agree. I agree. I feel like he's almost a victim of the technology that he had. He's like, okay, we can do this with CGI. And he went, I want to do this. This is everything with CGI. And he maybe overdid it a bit.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right,
I should come up with a final statement, but I don't have one.
Yeah, no, you got. I think I'm gonna say I'll stick with prequels for now, but I do fully, wholeheartedly agree with a lot of your arguments. So there is that. So, but that's it. That's the end of it for us.
The Rathtars.
Oh, you just lost.
You could have had me with the Rathtars.
You just lost me with that. Actually, I totally forgot about the Rathtars. You just lost me with that. Well, that being said, this is not very much of a contest. The prequel trilogy wins.
Hence my thesis
7-3.
That you've all been waiting for. The sequel trilogy is the best thing that ever happened to the prequels.
I like it. As I definitely agree. As we talked about earlier, partially, this whole new love for the prequels is partially, at least, from the sequels. I think it's also about the kids growing up, but I think a lot of people are going back and looking at them in a new light as a cohesive whole. So I'll go with that. All right, we are well over time. This is so we're gonna wrap this up. Jarvi, got anything to plug? You want to tell me where you can find you?
Richard-Erik with a K Jarvi on Instagram and Facebook, and go follow Action Industries on Instagram. And for next week, maybe you say where people can find you, and then we tease next week.
We can, or tease not next week, but tomorrow.
Well, are we going live with it?
No, but we're gonna we'll have to talk off air. But I'll say you can join me at Paul _DiNuzzo on Twitter. You can also find me on the patreon.com/Team Action for Action Industries. I help run the Patreon there. And you can interact with me, but please donate your money to the Action Industries. And you got some great tiers as far as Schmodown stuff goes. Go behind the scenes on Schmodown. That's how you get involved with the Commanding the Army game we were talking about earlier. We can get that's all explained on the Action Industries YouTube channel and on the Patreon. So you can find us there. And also you can find me in Class Action every week and Called Action as well. So with that being said, we are recording something tomorrow morning. We might debut it tomorrow morning. We might debut it later on in the week. We haven't decided when we're going to upload it because I know that Action Industries is off this week as well. So it gives us a little more freedom. Ben and Drew have said we could upload a second episode sometime this week. So we'll have to decide that off air. But let's just tease the hell out of it now.
Yep.
We're recording an episode where we are talking more Star Wars. Richard-Erik Jarvi and myself and two special guests. You might know them from Action Industries. You know them from Called Action. One of them, at least, from Called Action. Matty Kearns, big Star Wars fan, huge Star Wars fan. And, of course, my boy, Billy Belford, talking about some Space Wars, as he was wont to call them.
I'm so excited having them on board.
It's great to have guests. It's our first time we're going to have guests because it's a special episode. We're not a very guest-oriented show so far. Maybe we'll, as later goes on, start doing guests. This is a good first time to have guests, I think. And we're going to rank the live-action, theatrically released Star Wars films. You hear that, Bibbs? It's live-action, theatrically released. So that covers all our bases. We're not going to talk about the Ewok movies. We're not going to talk about the holiday special. It's just those in theaters in canon. So that's where we are. I'm Paul DiNuzzo. That's Richard-Erik Jarvi. Court is adjourned.